bound up with vast amounts, deplorable amounts of money. I realize deplorable is not a word I should use, but nasty might be better. But anyway, yeah, we do, but not in the same way. I think, it's a very, very interesting field to investigate and certainly to tell a story about, because it's actually what lobbyists are about narratives. They're about controlling narratives, creating narratives. And in this particular issue that the film is not the subject of the film, but it's the context of the film, obviously, which is the gun regulation issue, the whole fight is always about competing narratives. And one side of that argument has an overwhelming narrative, which is false, which means that every single tiny step in the direction of actually trying to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't necessarily have them is immediately exploded into a much larger issue, which is about a fantasy about taking weapons away from everybody. And unfortunately, Australia gave them a very good reason for people to believe that that might actually come about, but it won't. So it's a very interesting thing to get your head around, really, about how political process is controlled by narratives. And she's a bit of a genius at the way she uses that. A deplorable genius, I'm sorry to use it twice in one night. Obviously a very, very flawed character and a morally reprehensible character for much of the duration of the film, but not, I hope, by the end.
I'm actually curious about that because there's kind of this logic that I think has been done away with more and more in recent years, that your lead character has to be likable for an audience to go on a journey with her. And did you sort of embrace the fact that she was so complicated and did like a lot of unlikable things?
Yes, I not only embraced it, I insisted upon it. I mean, I just think it's so much more interesting. I think it's nonsense that we need characters to be likable. What we need them to be is human. And that's a very different thing, because there's a sort of, Kool-Aid that is offered to audiences, which says that even though somebody does awful things, they don't really mean to do them because this happened in their childhood, or there's always extenuating circumstances, so that you see reflected, if you're identifying with the hero or heroine of the story, you see yourself reflected, and it's a flattering portrait. And I think that that's fine in a certain kind of movie. I'm not knocking that. But in a movie which is dealing with sort of slightly more complex things sometimes, I'm not trying to claim great depth for this, I'm just saying it's more interesting, I think, to engage an audience in a character who does things that you don't really like, you wish that they hadn't done that, and you then start to analyze exactly what's going on with them emotionally and morally. And what I said to Johnny was, we don't have to make her put out milk for a kitten outside her door, to prove that she's a human being. You just have to let her make mistakes. And because she's burnt out at the beginning of the story, you don't realize it because she seems so in control of everything, but she is right on the edge of total collapse, I think, existentially, morally, emotionally, and physically. And even though she games her way through the whole thing, at least in various stages, not imagining she would ever get to every stage, she falls apart while the movie is happening, and in particular smashes somebody's life, or very nearly ends her life, actually. And that's quite a startling thing, and I think that at that point the audiences, you have to tell me whether this is true, become very engaged with her, and I think are rooting for her by the end, or at least I would hope they were.